Good morning, everyone. My name is Pat, and I'm an alcoholic. I have a direction from my sponsor. You see, I have a problem with my humility. He would say I have a problem with arrogance. I call it I have a problem with my humility. And he says the real way to deal with this, if I'm speaking at an occasion like this, is to take my teeth out and put them in the glass. I'm not going to do it. For once, I'm not going to follow directions. I am responsible. When anyone, anywhere, reaches out for help, I want the hand of AA always to be there, and for that, I am responsible. We used to have, at the meeting, when I first came to AA, up in the meeting room, we used to have that written up. And I haven't seen it like that for a long time. A great big board. And that's why it's sort of with me. I immediately think of when Bill handed over the responsibility of AA to the General Service Conference when AA came of age. And with the responsibility, he handed over 3 legacies, or 3 basic principles. That of recovery, unity, and service. And I think they are definitely in that order, because I don't think we can have unity without recovery, and I do not think we can have service without unity. So it's within that framework I want to tell my own story, as it were. I didn't think I was all that damaged when I came to AA. I thought I was still really coping very well. It was just, that I was in a very difficult situation. I was in the process of leaving my husband. I had 3 teenage children. And I was moving down from Scotland and trying to settle down here in England. And I thought I was doing exceptionally well. It wasn't my fault that an unwanted lover moved in on me and was living rent-free and all found. That was something sort of that I hadn't really been able to avoid. And so on and so forth. There were a lot of things that weren't really my fault. And actually, to this day, I thank that man. I didn't even like him, actually. And he did me a favor, because I got so desperate that my drinking escalated, right off the scale. And that was the thing that made me ask for help. It happened so quickly, so dramatically. And I was in such a tight spot that I did ask for help. I was in a very tight spot financially and in every other way, emotionally, and I was a mess. But I didn't see that at first. But I did know that my drinking was dangerous. And the reason I knew that was because I had 2 alcoholic parents who both died of alcoholism. And I have a brother that is brain damaged as a result of alcoholism. So I knew what was on the cards for me if I went on drinking. And that was the level of my understanding. Although I thought I knew all about alcoholism, that was as far as I went. I wanted to have the drinking stopped for me. I suppose there was an element that wanted me to be, wanted to be told I wasn't really an alcoholic. But I came in, I was told if the cap fits, wear it, and get your nose stuck into these steps, get active, get involved, get really engrossed in AA. And because I had no alternative, because I knew what the alternative was, death or insanity, I did what I was told. And it was very much that I did what I was told. I came to meetings, I was involved with the group, I joined the group, I got a copy of the big book, and I, got on with the steps, very much under direction. I did a 4th step, I did a 5th step, and so on. And I was very angry. How could this happen to me? I was very angry for at least 18 months. I mean, really seething angry that I should be an alcoholic. It was angry at fate, at God, at whatever you want to call it, that I should be like this. And I think the real reason I was angry was because I was very afraid, because I did not know that there was such a thing as recovery. And gradually, little by little, it began to dawn on me that time was going by and I had not had a drink. And so the fear began to ease out of me, and as the fear began to go, the anger began to go. And I really began to join AA with the heart, because I began to realize that life was leading me in a direction that I could not have chosen for myself. Good things were happening for me. I was earning my living for the first time in my life. I was, even silly, pathetic things. I learned to type. Middle-aged woman had learned to type, and I was earning my living. But I began to get a little bit of self-esteem back and self-respect, that I could support my children and I could deal with things as they came along. And I was happy, and I was happy for, I would say, about 6 or 7 years. And then things began to go wrong for me, and I felt increasingly uncomfortable. I felt a lot of the feelings that I had come in with, the cynicism, come back. A lot of the anger came back. I wasn't trusting anybody or anything. I certainly wasn't communicating with anybody. In fact, I was arguing up and down with my sponsor every time it was suggested I do something. I would argue. I would say, why should I? And this went on, becoming worse for, I would say, at least a couple of years. And I really was becoming very desperate, because I didn't know what was wrong. And my sponsor and I, we were driving to Manchester, to the Manchester Convention. And driving along, he was driving, and I was sitting there arguing. And he said something, I don't know why, to this day, I don't know why it got through to me. I think he was pretty exasperated, and he said, there is nothing wrong with you other than untreated alcoholism. And something would click in my mind, because there were areas that I had not dealt with. There were areas that were poisoning everything else. No matter all the work I had done, there were these things that had not been dealt with, that were left untreated. And that made a lot of sense to me. And I suppose I became willing for the first time in a long, long time. And I said, what do I do? And the answer was very simple. You go back to the beginning of the steps, and you work those steps again as if you have never worked them before. And I did just that. I went right back to the beginning from step 1. And I didn't rush them, and I took them one at a time, spending time with each one, really getting to grips with it, and not going on to the next one until my sponsor thought I was ready to go on to the next one. Very much with the book in one hand and the pencil and paper in the other hand. And I did another 4th step. And I did another 5th step. And by this time I was really willing to have those defects removed because they were hurting. And I asked for those defects to be removed. But before I did a bit of study in the big book. And it was then that the whole thing fell into place for me. Because up until that point, I had been working at this program for my benefit. What was in it for me? In fact, I was using AA in much the same way as I had used alcohol. I was using AA to make me feel better. It was me, myself personally, all the time. And I read the prayer, the 7th step prayer, and nowhere in there does it talk about me feeling better. It talks about being able to be of service. And that seemed to put the whole thing into a different perspective. It gave a purpose, it gave a meaning to my recovery. You know, up until that point, what had been my recovery been about? Only to save my skin. It was certainly not to do God's will. It was certainly not to be of service. And I think very much of what Dr. Bob said, that the whole of the AA program can be summed up in 2 words, love and service. And I think the word love is really what unity is about. Because I have got to have that love for my fellow alcoholic, for my fellow group member, for the people who are coming into AA, for AA to be alive for me. Otherwise, I am trying to do it in isolation. And that doesn't work. There's a beautiful story of Sackville, who is actually my grandfather in AA. He was my sponsor's sponsor. And he tells a beautiful story of Sackville because there was somebody who had started falling off from meetings, was not going to his group, not communicating with other people. And Sackville was asked to go and see him to see if he could be of help, what was wrong. So Sackville went to see this man, and it was in Ireland, and it was a little cottage, miles from anywhere. And Sackville rode a motorbike. My mind has always boggled at that a little bit, but Sackville got on this motorbike and drove off and went to see him. And he knocked at the door, and he went in. Sackville never said a word, and he sat down with the man in front of the lovely fire. Sackville still never said a word. He leant forward and he picked up the fire tongs, and he took a coal from the fire, and he just lifted it forward and put it at the front of the hearth. He still never said a word. And little by little, that coal went out. Because it could not stay alight on its own. It needed the unity of the whole of the fire. And that is me within AA. I need that unity for my sobriety to be alive. I need that unity within the group, and I believe that that unity comes not because we are all drunk, but because we are all following a common path to recovery. I am traveling the same journey as you are traveling. You are traveling the same journey as I am traveling, because we have got in common the big book. We have got in common the steps. We have got in common the traditions. And that, I think, is where our unity lies. And that is where our fellowship of the Spirit lies. And the service, I believe, grows out of that, because if you have love for your fellow alcoholic, for other people, if you are wanting to be of service to God, because that really is what it's about, then we are of service to our fellow alcoholics. Now, I'm not involved, and never have been involved, in what people seem to assume by the word service. I am not involved in the structure of AA service, because that has never been my lot. It hasn't happened for me. But I am involved, I believe, very firmly in service towards my fellow alcoholics. I think it's been mentioned already, I'm involved in retreats. I'm involved in a little publication called Bristol Passion. Okay, that's technically not AA, but it is for recovering alcoholics. I'm involved in the Bristol Reunion in Bristol. You'll see leaflets for it down there. I get to plug in when I can. I'm very much involved in my group. I'm very much involved in the very basic, simple things of putting out the ashtrays, clearing up the cups, making sure the meeting room is ready, making sure that the thing goes properly. I'm very much involved when a new person comes in the door. I'm very much involved when I see an older person having a bit of trouble. I'm very much involved when I'm in trouble. With my group, they can come to me and say, look, you're in trouble. I need that. I need that to be alive, to live. And I mean that not just in the physical sense of staying away from a drink. I stayed away from a drink for 6 or 7 years, and I ended up, I think, more screwy than I had been before. I mean that I need that in order to live fully, to be awake, to be aware, to relate to people. I have funny little warning signals, and one of them with me is if I go into a shop and come out and cannot tell you what the assistant looked like, then I'm in trouble. It means I'm back to my old habit of looking down like this and wondering and not to look people in the eye, to talk to people, to be able to relate to people, to be able to go forward to people. I need that to live. And that is what the AA program has given me. It's given me also, it's funny because I'm almost going to contradict what I said. When I wasn't looking for it, I got the rewards. Because today I am happy. Today I do feel fulfilled. Today I have got a life that befits a human being. I have got a full life. Just a year ago just over a year ago, I moved house. And I have got my little house, and I have got a little garden, and I'm gradually beginning to get to know the community around me, my neighbours. I've joined the local gardening club. I've done all these things. Now, my goodness, actually it was funny because my first thought was, the meetings are a bit funny, they're not like ours. They don't start with the Serenity Prayer and all these kind of things, but it was lovely. It's getting to know people outside, being able to relate to people outside. I think none of that would be possible if it weren't for the relationship I have with my higher power, because that is the fundamental thing. That was the thing that I learned in the seventh step. The rest of the program, sure, is putting that into practice. But it is being of service to God and to my fellow man, or woman, if you're bothered. that is the thing which has brought so much to me. I used to think it was giving out, giving out, giving out. It's not. I am so much richer because my life has touched other people's lives, and their lives have touched me, none of which would have happened in the years when I was totally obsessed with self, because that is what I was, and I have been given freedom from that and release from that. And that, I believe, is where I am responsible. I am responsible to keep that alive, to keep open, to keep putting that step into practice, and then it works. Thank you all very much.